Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be answering one very specific question, and that is, what is a pint of mixed? Now, if the video was just that question, it would be over pretty quickly, but let me give you a little bit of backstory as to why I'm even asking it. In a recent BBC dramatisation of something that happened quite a while ago, there's a programme called Sherwood, which, as you probably guessed by the name, is set pretty locally to myself here in Nottingham, being close to Sherwood Forest, and it is indeed set in that area. It doesn't really have a lot to do with beer, except for one of the characters in this show goes into their local pub, social club, whatever you want to call it, miners' welfare establishment, and asks the bar lady for a pint of mixed.
Pint of mixed, please, barwoman.
Are you up to much today, Gary? Out and out?
Ah, not much stuck. Not a great deal.
And that had me thinking. I thought, I've not actually come across that before. I'm sure many of you have, but for any of us who have only ever lived in cities and, well, kind of been on the beer scene since the 2000s, then, well, yeah, it's probably not just not something you would come across. So, getting right to it, what is a pint of mixed? Well, it turns out it's a pint that is mixed, unsurprisingly, 50% best bitter and 50% mild. For those that don't know, mild is a younger beer, lightly hopped, and best bitter is, well, I guess traditionally mild was the cheaper one. Because it's not as aged and there's not much hop in it, which is the more expensive component, and best bitter is considered the best version of that kind of beer, i.e. it's matured, it's got a bit more hop and just quality ingredients in. So mixing them together, I just realised that's absolutely wonky and going to annoy me. Yeah, mixing them together, I guess you kind of come out with a halfway house that's a bit cheaper than buying a full pint of best, but is maybe a bit better than a full pint of mild. That said, mild is a style I enjoy quite a lot, so much so that right now actually I've got a whole polypin of it on the Pint 365, so I thought this is a great opportunity to find out if a pint of mixed is worth doing. So unsurprisingly, the half of mixed will come indeed from the Pint 365. On here I've got a Rock Mild from the Nottingham Brewery, 3.8%. Beautiful, light, easy drinking beer, and the best bitter, well, I thought I had a few in to choose from. Turns out I was wrong, but I've got one, and one is all we need. I'll be honest, it's going to be a bit of a curveball, and it is this. From Ampersand Brew Co. and Leon Sea Brewery, a collab called Sand and Sea Extra Special Bitter. This probably isn't the type of bitter that people traditionally mix in a pint of mix, but it's 5.2%, it's an extra special bitter, that's all we really need. So, yeah. We'll also test this beer on its own, and of course the Rock Mild as well, just to see what they're like on their own. But I can tell you already, this one's fantastic, and to be honest, I've got high hopes for this one as well. So, let's get into it. What do we need? Well, we like to be accurate on this channel, so I'm using my Knott's Craft Beer Festival glass to measure half a pint out of this can to then pour into there, and then we'll top it up out of the Pint 365. I've not been able to find a suggestion that one needs to go in before the other. I figured, given that this is on pump, it makes sense to do that last. So let's do this. Right then, to the half pint line. Beautiful colour on this one. That'll do. I made a mess. Right then, mess cleaned up. Let's get half a pint of mild in here as well. I've taken the sparkler off, which I know is a travesty of a thing to do up north, where, well, I'm not really north, but I'm north enough for it to be a travesty nonetheless. But this beer actually plenty lively enough without it, so it just ends up foaming with it on, so we're going to leave it off. In we go. Just going to let that settle for a minute. Here we go then. My first ever pint of mixed. I was a bit stupid because there are half pint lines on this pint glass, so I didn't even need to waste that drop, but never mind, here we are. Probably because all the foam on this is from the mild, that's all it really smells like at this point. It's got a definite freshness, a sweetness, not super complex, but a nice biscuity base. Yeah, a decent beer. Right then, let's give this a go. Cheers. So, I can say with certainty it's definitely different to just this on its own. And in fact, I'm going to pour just a touch to sample. That beer on its own, it is very green, very fresh. No real smoky depth to it at all. It's very clean, biscuity, malt, very malt forward, but not, again, it's just not, it doesn't have depth. It's fresh and it's perfectly well balanced, but there's just no real depth to it. However, this, absolutely solid, best bitter backbone to it that's deeper, more caramelly notes, some hot bitterness in there, and I can see why. I can see why this is the thing, because we need to try that on its own now. So let me get rid of this, and there's only one way to do that. This best bitter, there you go, that's the, well, you've already seen the colour of it once, but it's yeah, it's a nice looking thing, that beer, for sure. Nice ruby colour to it. This has much more going on. Initially, it's a bit prickly, bit of carbonation in there, but also a tiny hint of citrus. And it bounces around a bit more, say, deeper caramel flavours, less of the biscuity note, much more a much more modern ale than the mild is. Yeah, it's that would be a fantastic pint on its own. But I would say, actually, after a couple of these, this specific beer, I'm like, right, I'm ready to change it up a bit now. And I have to say, I have the same problem with this. Because it's not super complex, those flavours get very repetitive, maybe a bit quicker than they would do on, say, a more modern beer. However, the mix, that is a very basic cocktail, but the resulting flavours, I have to say, really, really work. It's a bit less hoppy, a bit more biscuity, but still holds the complexities of a best bitter, but also a lot of the freshness and the refreshing nature of the mild. And as a result, as a session beer, for me, that is actually more enjoyable than either of the two on their own. The mild is a very good session beer because its ABV is low, it's 3.8, so or even 3.2. No, I'm pretty sure it's 3.8, that one. But you know, it's, yeah, it suffers from being a bit repetitive, whereas this might suffer from being a bit heavy. This best bitter, this is smack down the middle, and to be honest, showcases the best parts of either of these beers pretty damn well. It's yeah, a surprising find in some ways. I was not expecting to dislike this, but I felt myself thinking, to be honest, I'd probably just rather go pint of that, pint of that, pint of that, pint of that, rather than mixing them. But I think once you've had a pint of the best, then the mild may seem a bit tame, a bit weak. And yeah, this stops that. I'm actually a big fan. So yeah, all the pubs out there, can we bring back a pint of mixed? Because I have to say, I'm a big fan. And that really is all I've got to say about it. So as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you haven't already subscribed, if you will be so kind, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.